It's Randy Bigley joining me right now. We're going to have a special podcast today. We're going to talk with our very own Davey Jones. Hello, Davey.
How you doing, Randy?
I'm doing wonderful. I'm glad you could be here with me. You always are a vast knowledge, or a vast, what I'm looking for the word, you have all that knowledge of the
Experience?
experience of the past and history and stuff. And I know one day you were talking to me about this house that we're in. We've been in since 1963, and I thought it was fascinating. And let's go ahead and talk about a little bit of history of our building that we're in.
Well, to be totally honest with you, when I got here, actually, the radio station acquired the building in 1961.
Okay.
And I wasn't around for any of that. I've got that from listening to the original owners. They acquired the house in 1961. The home was built in 1876 on East Rensselaer Street. One of the neighbors here told me this was Millionaire Row.
Oh, yeah.
All the people that lived in the homes along East Rensselaer Street were the manufacturers and some of the folks in town that were a little bit more affluent. This home was built by people from New Washington. The family name was High, H-I-G-H.
Okay.
They owned an automobile dealership in New Washington for years and years and years. They only had the house for 3 years, from 1876 to 1879.
Okay.
They sold the property to the Carroll family. Now, Mr. Carroll, who I understand passed away in this building, in this floor.
Oh, wow.
But he was a manufacturer. He built steel farm implements. And the Carroll Foundry was up on North Sandusky Avenue, where the current Randy's Tire and Auto Repair is. And they owned the property right up until the early 1960s. And I don't know why they sold it, but Tom and LaVon Moore bought the radio station, or this building, to house the radio station in 1961.
Oh, wow.
And then the station actually went on the air. WBCO 1540 AM went on the air December 22, just a few days before Christmas, 1962.
Okay.
And WQEL, which back then was WBCO FM 92.7, went on the air April 1, 1964. And that was a pretty big day around here, because not only did WBCO FM go on the air on April 1st, but they hired 2 employees who were longtime employees of the radio station. Doyle Weaver, who was our morning guy, he did everything. Doyle was the morning drive time guy. He did sports. He was our ag director, and we did a lot of ag broadcasting back then. He did it all. And then we also had a guy named Charlie Brown. Charlie was hired as a sales representative, and I think in 1967 he became sales manager. The original sales manager was a guy named Glenn Cheeseman.
Who I know. Yeah.
You know Glenn? Yeah,
do.
Glenn, that's right. Glenn worked at WVNO for years and years and years. And Glenn left in 1967 to go to WVNO, and then Charlie assumed the position of sales manager. Well, I learned a lot from Doyle about programming, and I learned an awful lot about sales and marketing from not only Charlie, but Glenn Cheeseman as well. I mean, I used to have all kinds of conversations with Glenn over in the Galleon area. And I learned an awful lot from Tom, too. Tom and Charlie were just totally the opposite of each other personality-wise. Tom was certainly the big suit and, a guy who graduated from college and had degrees. Charlie never got out of the 9th grade.
Really?
No, never got out of the 9th grade, but he was a street smart as a Dickens, and I learned an awful lot from Charlie. Charlie was a sales rep, then a sales manager, and then he also did a country radio show from 3:30 until 6 o'clock on WBCO, Charlie Brown and the Country Sound. This studio we're in right now, this wall didn't exist when I first came here. This wall was built later, and this was all one big room. And this was the main control room. Our board was not facing where our board is today. It was facing against that wall.
Okay.
And Charlie did the Country Sound from 3:30 to 6 o'clock, Monday through Friday, right here in this room. I actually did morning drive on weekends, Saturday morning, from this room. I would come in at 4 a.m., we'd hit the air at 5 a.m., and I'd be on until 12 noon on Saturdays. And I did that for 14 years. And then they started changing the format, and I wasn't going to be very, well, I probably could have done the format what we had in 1985. I could have done it, but they started getting into automation. And to be totally honest with you, be doing Friday night phone board, and then doing Saturday mornings, it was killing me.
Oh, I bet. Yeah.
And Tom said, well, what should we, you got your choice. And then he told me my choice was I was going to stay on Friday nights and relinquish Saturday morning, which was the right choice.
Sure.
But it was really killing me during football season to do both of them.
Oh, I bet it was. Yeah. And that's when you were a young guy.
Yeah, I was. I was.
Right.
I started here when I was 21 years old.
Wow.
I was just shy of, just a little bit past 21, and I learned a lot. I learned a lot in the early years here, and I had job offers to go to other radio stations, but none of them ever really.
Yeah.
This is a great place to raise your family.
Sure.
We had a job offer in Cleveland in 1983, and I opted out only because actually the money wasn't that much better in Cleveland than it is here.
Right.
And we had two little kids and a nice house over on Ridge Avenue, and we just decided that it was a lot better to stay here in Crawford County than it was to go up to Cuyahoga County and the hustle and bustle of the big city.
You've been here, 53 years, right?
Well, I will start my 54th year on May 28th.
Wow.
And
that 1970s when you started, right?
Yeah, right out of college,
Yeah.
and in 1970, you take a look. What's the date today? May 4th.
Today is the 4th of May.
Yeah. Okay. Well, see, I remember May 4th real well. In 1970, that was the day Kent State happened.
Oh yeah, you're right.
And I was working as an intern in Columbus at several Columbus area radio stations in the newsroom, and that was an interesting day because the whole, not only did everything get really crazy up at Kent State, but it got crazy at Ohio State as well, and I was on the Oval with doing radio remotes for several Columbus radio stations as a co-op, and then they took us downtown in front of the state capitol building. I still got pictures somewhere.
Really?
Yeah. I remember Woody Hayes getting up on the a big kind of platform, trying to give a speech in favor of President Nixon. The kids were not having, the young people at Ohio State were not buying that at all, and they actually pelted him with fruit.
Really?
Oh yeah,
the great Woody Hayes, they pelted him with
fruit.
fruit.
Yeah, they loved him as a football coach, but Coach Hayes' political views were in line with the more conservative element back that time, and they weren't buying into Coach Hayes' philosophy whatsoever.
Sure. Well, that was an interesting day, wasn't it?
It was, and I remember it very, very well. It was a beautiful day outside on May 4th, 1970. And it was not only May 4th, but it was May 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, the next several days. And then they finally closed down the Ohio State University. I don't think we got supposed to do all this stuff. We were supposed to talk a little bit more about the radio station. But that was just a few days before I started working here. And,
wow.
I got a phone call from Tom Moore, and he was looking for a guy that could do advertising and marketing, and also be on air. And I had a background in school for marketing and advertising, as well as on air, and I kind of fit the bill. Although I was his number 2 choice.
Really?
Yeah. This first guy, I was fortunate. The first guy was a little bit older than I was, and they thought he would be a little bit more mature. Only because he was 5, 6, 7, 8 years older than I was, and he was married, and I wasn't married at the time. But I think things worked out pretty well.
I think so. You're still here. Well, you've retired once, right?
Yeah. Well, I told our corporate offices that I was going to. I had to have my knees done. I had to have knee surgery, and I had double knee replacements back in June 30th, 2015. I gave them a whole year's advance notice. I talked to corporate, and they kept talking to me, and they didn't really want me to leave. It was just, I was flattering. And about a couple weeks before my knee surgery, they go, try this on. Says, have your knee surgery, then recover, and sometime around August or early September, come on back and help us train the new people that we're going to be hiring, and see how that works for you. And I go, well, that sounds good. And we want you to do the phone board on Friday night during football season. Okay, that sounds cool. And I went home, ran that by Joni, and she said, yeah, that's cool. Well, it worked out pretty well. And about November, they came up and said, this is working out pretty good. we know you want to go to Florida in January, February, and March. And I know I wasn't going to talk Joni out of that.
Right, sure.
So they said, go to Florida, come on back in April, do it all over again, just be a part-timer. Well, I'm a little more closer to full-time than I am part-time, but it gives me something to do.
Sure.
And the bottom line is that I have so many of my friends who I went to high school and college with who are my age and are totally retired. And I see these guys in there sit home and watch television all day, and I go, I don't want to do that.
It's not you, right?
No, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
So I get to go out, and I still get to see my clients. I have about half the number of clients that I had when I was full-time. And I still get to do some on air. I still do the Friday night phone board during football season. I do a lot of remotes. We're going to be doing a remote tomorrow, Friday the 5th in downtown Bucyrus, the first Friday event. I get to work with a bunch of really good people. I will be working. I understand you're coming to that remote,
I'll be
right?
down there, yes.
God bless you, man. I mean, that's the reason I'm showing up. I wouldn't be.
Right.
I get to work with Claudia, and when you come down to the remote, you'll be able to tell Claudia from Randy and I. She's the one with the lipstick.
Right? Yeah, we don't wear it.
And but we I get to do quite a few remotes, especially during the summer, and still stay active with the sports.
Phone board. Now you created that show, correct?
Well, yeah. What happened was in 1975, we used to do a live broadcast of play-by-play, and then we did a tape-delayed broadcast, and I used to help out on the tape-delayed broadcast, and it didn't sell very well. And Tom was saying, he wanted more sales on the tape-delayed broadcast, and I just told him, I said, it's not going to happen. People aren't interested in a tape-delayed broadcast. The sales manager, Charlie Brown, said, can't sell it, Tom. He says, well, we got to do something. And I've been toying with the idea a little bit for a while, because when I was a kid, I used to listen to Saturday afternoons on WCWA 12:30 a.m. out of Toledo. It was a guy named Don King, and he did the Don King Sports Show. It was a sports talk show, just like the phone board. He did it right after Ohio State football. WCWA was the Ohio State Network station in Toledo. They did the Ohio State game. They're all in the afternoon then. And he did then he did this telephone sports talk show called the Don King Sports Talk Show. And he didn't have scores. He had listeners call in. Okay, tell me how Bowling Green's doing. Tell me how Indiana and Illinois and Purdue are doing. And I used to listen to the show, and I kind of listened to it not only because I was interested in sports, but I was interested in the way that he did that show. And this goes back all the way to late when I was in high school and early in college at the University of Toledo. And this guy's got it together, and this is a good idea. But I never until Tom started talking about it, I said, this is what we ought to do. We ought to try that. Well, at that time, I was doing Saturday mornings.
Sure.
And I really didn't want to do Friday nights because, I'm not an idiot. I don't want to, work till midnight on Friday night and then be back in here at 4 a.m.
Right.
Well, they had somebody all set ready to do the show on phone board, and then something blew up and he was gone. And they came to me, well, just do it for a few weeks and kind of give us the feel of what we're supposed to do. Well, the show took off right away, and they wouldn't let me leave, and I appreciate their enthusiasm and loyalty, and so I ended up doing the show, and for the next 7 or 8 years, I did the show both Friday night and Saturday morning. It was killing me.
Oh, I bet.
And and finally it got to the point where when they were changing all the equipment and from manual to automation and computers, and every time I would walk in, they would I'd just get down and learn what they had, and then they changed it all, and I go, this is crazy, and so they replaced me on Saturday morning. Well, even though I still enjoyed doing this, I really did enjoy doing the disc jockey work on Saturday morning. It's just like Jeff Ruth,
I know exactly right. He did it for many years too. Yeah.
Well, you stop and think about the guys we had here too in the morning here. Doyle did morning drive for a long time, and I can't remember all the guys, but we had a guy in the mid-'70s named Raymond J. Well, Ray Reynolds, Ray.
Oh yeah, I do
so
know Ray.
Ray worked here for about 3 years, and he was a young fellow. He was Raymond J.
Raymond J.
Raymond J. And then when he left here, became Ray Reynolds down at WDIF. Then Jim Radke came in. Jim did morning for us for a long time. Jim did mornings, then he was gone, then came back to mornings. In 1980, we got a guy from Galleon, the Galleon radio station. His real name was John Badenhop.
I know John, too.
Yeah,
Oh, I knew John.
he went by John Michaels on the radio.
Mm-hmm.
And we had John here for about 5 years. Then John left and went to the TV station here in town first. He told me later that was a big mistake, but then he segued out of the Bucyrus television into Mansfield TV, and then I think he was there for maybe 8-10 years.
Yeah, he did the weather over there.
He did, yeah, he did the weather, but I think he also worked on in sales over in
sure.
Richland County as well. But we had, I can't remember all the different people. We had a guy named Rick Brienza for several years here in Morning Drive. He did a great job. He was really good, and he was my producer on Phone Board for several years, and the guy knew his football, and that was during the Bernie Kosar era.
Oh, yeah.
And we had a lot of really great shows during the Browns run to fame in the 80s, and with Bernie Kosar.
Time, yes.
And then the Denver fiascos.
Yes, right.
And
that'll haunt us forever.
Oh, yeah, you know,
the drive.
Oh, yeah, and then I had several, mostly women calling me that told me that they were rooting for Denver because they thought John Elway was so good looking. You know, and
I always thought he kind of looked like a horse.
I did too. I said he looks like Mr. Ed for crying out loud.
Right, yeah.
And you know, and I called them some rather colorful names, which I was chastised for later, but I knew who those girls were, and they weren't insulted. I insulted some of the people here at the radio station who thought it was inappropriate when I called them, but they were insulted. They enjoyed it. I mean, they called me up one week and tell me that, and they'd call right back up the next week, you know, and almost daring me to call them a name again.
Yeah,
so,
right. Yeah.
It was less than flattering, though, but they thought it was funny.
How many times do you hear this? You know, Davey, I grew up with you. I grew up listening to you after the football games. We used to first thing we did after the games, we'd turn on the show.
I get that a lot. I mean, I'm the third generation.
Yeah.
And I get that a lot. And I think one of the things about the phone board that's changed over the years is we don't have as many young people. Young people depend on their phones.
Oh, they do.
And they don't call. I was talking to Rob Sheldon several years ago, who was the head basketball coach at Winford. And he says, man, when we got in the bus, we always turned you on right away. You know, he says, now the kids get in the bus and they have their headphones on, their computers, and they don't care. They don't seem to care about, you know, what the other schools did. Most of my callers now are adults. I mean, I have some young people that call, but most of the vast majority of my audience on Friday night is 35 plus. And before we did have a lot more younger people, and even when my son was playing football, his teammates, they listened, but Matt's 42 years old now.
Yeah.
And things have changed. And I think the big things that's changed it is computers and telephones. And I see professional football and basketball players, you know, they're walking into the stadium in their suit and they got their headphones on and they're bebopping to the music. Well, we used to listen to our rock and roll too, Randy, but you know, but we took our headphones off and communicated with our friends and colleagues. And it is surprising how different it is just because of the computerization.
Sure. Coach's Corner, was that your idea too?
Actually, it was more Don Diosi's idea than mine. Coach's Corner was, Don actually did the show at the Galleon radio station. It was called Tiger Talk then.
Okay.
And when Don left the radio station.
Is that WQLX?
Yeah.
Okay. And GLX?
102.3. And when Don left the radio station, I think in 1992, the general area, Don and I were downstairs in the sales room. The sales room used to be downstairs, and we started talking about some of the things that happened on Tiger Talk when he was at WQLX. And I said, why aren't we doing that over here? I mean, you know, obviously all those clients that used to be on WQLX with Tiger Talk are no longer there because WQLX completely dropped doing all local sports whatsoever at that point in time. So, you know, why aren't we doing it over here? And Don and I, within 10 minutes, put a plan together and took it into Tom Moore. And we knew how to get to Tom. Tom was a businessman. He was a broadcaster. He was a businessman. Tom, we've got an idea, and we think we can show you a way to make some money. I'm interested. Sit down and tell me more. And we went in and gave him our plan, and within 15 minutes, you know, we were good to go. And Tom asked me how much I thought I could do, and I gave him a number, and we exceeded it by 40%. And he was, you know, very happy. And it was just Tiger Talk then. It was at the Galleon Pizza Hut only, and Don Dios, he was doing the show. And he did great. And we did it for football season and worked out so well. We came back and did it for basketball season. And within a couple of years, we expanded it to both Bucyrus and Galleon. And instead of just having Galleon, we took us a couple of years, but we expanded where we had all 6 county schools involved in it.
Yeah. And it's still going on. We've changed a little bit.
It's changed a little bit. And of course, we're doing the
video stuff.
The video, and that's probably a good idea. I was skeptical at the beginning.
Yeah.
But one of the problems with Tiger Talk was it started at 6 o'clock. Okay, we've got the Cleveland Indians, and then, you know, the Indians used to start at 7:30, so we could join the network at 7 o'clock. Then they moved it back, so we were bumping into the Indians. The video, which we're doing right now, certainly has added a different twist to what we're able to do here at the radio station.
Yeah.
And the video with not only sports, but all the videos that you're doing with people of interest in our community. You know, and I certainly have gone, you know, I look at, you know, I just gave a great big soliloquy about what was bad about computers and so on and so forth, but I find myself looking at a lot of that stuff too.
Right, yeah, a lot of people are, and that's why we kind of had to go that direction. But yeah, you know, radio's changing. You know,
Yeah, it is.
probably in your 53 years, you've probably seen a lot of changes.
I have seen a lot of changes, and you know, and I'm very aware that it is continuing to change.
Yeah.
And of course, you know, we've had local ownership here at WQEL, WBCO from 1962 to Tom had it till 1998, and then Mike and Donna came in 98, and in 03 the Saga came in and blew them away with a nice offer, and I didn't blame them at all for taking the money. And right now we're corporately owned. Firstly, all radio stations are corporately owned. There's
most of them
hardly
are.
any that's locally owned anymore.
I can think of a handful that's not the corporate owned. It's locally owned.
Yeah, I don't know where the heck they are, you know, but most metro stations are corporately owned, and we're Saga Communications. I think we've got about 110 stations nationwide. They treat me well. The iHeart's the big one. I mean, they've got stations all. I think they're pushing 1,000 now, aren't they?
Yeah, some are. Oh yeah, more than that. The only locally one I know around here is WQEL, still owned by the same family.
That's right. Good point.
Yeah.
Still a good point. Yeah.
Yeah, that's about it though. There's not much more. That's a rarity these days, actually. So yeah. Well, Davey, I hear them calling you for your meeting. You have one of your sales meetings today, and you know, thank you for coming in today and talking.
I enjoy doing it.
We'll talk again if you want to talk a bit more about the house, and we'll talk again and cover that. We'll do another one sometime here.
All right. You just give me a call, and we'll see if we can arrange it for you, okay?
All right. Davey, it's always good to talk to you. You always are full of great stories. And
I enjoy talking to you, too, man. I come into the newsroom talking to you and Dan Messerschmidt, and I hope I'm not bothering these guys. But you know. And see, that's the thing about radio here. Not only are you my business colleagues, but you're buddies and friends, too. So.
Yeah. I'm glad to say it. It's fun. That's what, you know, there's only a handful of us that work here now.
Yeah.
You know, so we're all pretty close. And it's good because, like I said, I know if I have a question about the history of this place, I can just go right to Davey Jones.
Yeah, I've been here for most of it, so.
Davey, I really appreciate you.
Thanks a lot for your time.
Much.
Yes, sir.
Same here. Thank you.